Jesse with Teachers Starting Fires here as part of the personalized podcast productions that we're doing. We talk to teachers, and as we get problems and kind of help them out, we realized, we don't need to wait for teachers to come to us specifically. There are huge communities and message boards where people post problems. So we pulled a message, or occasionally pull a message off of Reddit, and we found one today that we're excited to look at. So the post today that we're addressing is off of the r/teachers subreddit, and the title is, "I can't tell if I am in a genuinely bad teaching environment or if I'm just a special snowflake for being unhappy in my job." I'm going to read through it. It's a long post, but I'll read through a couple of the main ideas of it. Basically, it's a second-year teacher in an urban charter school, which definitely strikes home with me. And they said last year was horrendous. Essentially, there are no subs showing up at the school. We had the exact same problem. Plus, a lot of the teachers would basically take days off every week because 2 or 3 days was about as much as any teacher could handle in the school. They're a 23-year-old, 4'11" white girl, so a short white girl, never, did not grow up in an inner city school, and the students are on average much larger than her as well. They struggled with classroom management last year and went home crying nearly every day. Taught 4 different kinds of social studies last year, 5 types this year. So you got 5 different preps, and it feels overwhelming. They're the only social studies teacher in the school, so there's no support. And I had that exact same experience as the science teacher when the one other science teacher in the school quit literally the first day of my first job ever. So that was pretty exciting, and I can understand that same issue. She's hoping that the next year is going to be better, but it's week 3 and it's just as much of a train wreck. As she's talked to people, her boyfriend, her mom, and the response on Reddit is pretty similar. They say, nobody's really happy with their job. Maybe you just have to suck it up and come back to reality. And, working with kids is not actually that great. So you should just relax and be verbally abused by children. And basically the question here at the end is, how does a person know if they're in a bad school, if teaching truly isn't for them, or if they're just having an unrealistic expectation? No one in my classes listens to a word I say, and the good kids are frustrated they have me as a teacher because I can't control the bad ones, and I feel terrible about that. I am just at my wit's end, and I'm right on the edge of quitting and finding a new career path, but I don't know how to know if it's really time to be done. Any advice or stories of comfort would be appreciated. As somebody that went through a pretty similar experience with students, Austin and I thought this was a pretty excellent Reddit post to address, to talk about a little bit. So we've got that phone call conversation that we recorded. The mics were a little off this time, so we sort of have a phone radio edit, but hopefully it can still be valuable. The feedback that a lot of teachers are saying, though, essentially is just that, you're right, that school sucks, and you should really move on to another school, find a different job, get out of there immediately. And having worked at, it sounds like to me, a somewhat similar school for in a couple different positions over the last 5 or 6 years. I am hoping that the poster here doesn't feel that they just have to leave and that there's teaching is the wrong fit for them. So Austin and I talk about that a little. Just before that, I do want to share the quick story. My first day teaching, or at least it was my first week, that teacher that was supposed to be my mentor teacher for this new career I was in quit the very first day. Literally came in at, about 6 a.m. before school started, cleaned out his desk and just left and did not tell anybody. So that's what I walked into after having met him at one of the teacher PDs. So I thought I had a mentor teacher, and instead I turned out to be the science department for the first 2 years of teaching there as well. But the first day, one of the students who, as I got to know him later on in the year, but he came up, the easy description, essentially kind of one of the gangbanger students at our school, and there were quite a few of them, one of the issues that we dealt with, and he'd grown up in kind of the neighborhood of violence, and that's just what he was used to, but he had put 3 thumbtacks between his fingers and was going around and high-fiving a couple students, and I had no idea, but he came up and he was like, oh, hey, you're the new teacher. Cool. What's up? And he high-fived me, and, it was a hard high five too. So it kind of like it stung a little bit. And then I looked down, because my hand was still hurting, and I realized he'd had 3 thumbtacks pressed between his fingers and had punched 3 holes in my hand. And the thing was, like in most schools, okay, so the cops are coming and he goes to, gets charged with assault and he drew blood from a teacher and all that. But the thing was, I just working with students before through years of summer camp and experiential ed, I could tell he wasn't like doing it to be malicious. He wasn't trying to assert dominance. He wasn't trying to attack me. That was really his method of trying to bond with the new school teacher. And had I taken that normal approach and tried to get him, prosecuted or sent to juvie or whatever, we would have lost all ability to have any impact. And I think impact is really why we got into teaching in the first place. And, of course, for a moment, it was kind of like, wow, do I really need to go find a new school right away? Like, I just got my teaching license and my degree and I'm all excited. And I think I was just assaulted. But instead, over the next few weeks, I was able to talk with him. Eventually we even talked about the thumbtack thing, and he apologized and, basically said the same thing, like, that stuff goes on at his home. How is he supposed to know that's so wrong in the school? But the idea is finding that right fit, knowing that there are schools out there with students that are completely different. But hopefully the conversation that Austin and I have, might at least give you a little food for thought, give this poster something to think about, and maybe inspire a couple of thoughts from other people.
Okay, so you found the post. Do you think that teachers starting fires is for someone like this?
Yeah, the fact that she's returned shows that she is a passionate teacher. It sounds like she's stayed there longer than a whole lot of other teachers. And I think it'd be a shame to lose her to the profession. And I think we can definitely discuss some ways that she might feel a little more motivated to stay.
Oh, at the end she says, this school expects so much that before school started, they wanted us to drive to students' houses in obviously bad neighborhoods to randomly pop in and ask for their enrollment paperwork. I was terrified.
I mean, like, our school does home visits, and our principal, though, will go in, but even in the neighborhoods he goes into, everybody thinks he's ICE because he's a tall, white, like, bald dude in a suit. And so half the time, like, people won't open doors or anything else.
Okay, so home visits are, like, can be good, but they're also problematic.
Right. I mean, yeah. It's like most things where somebody did it well, and so there's research showing that it works, so then other people try to jump on it. But, like, sending a terrified teacher into neighborhoods where she's not comfortable, like, that's not going to increase school attendance.
Right. So what would you say to this person? Because a lot of the advice that they're getting, I don't know if you're reading this, people are saying, this is normal, you should find a new job. Or you should quit. Yeah.
I mean, it depends what she's looking for. Like, we had teachers that, that at-risk school was the right spot. And then there are also teachers that, of course, just shouldn't be there because they're content-focused. And I mean, for me, it's like school, and this is kind of our thing on Maslow's hierarchy, but schools should be helping each person grow to their full potential as an individual and a citizen, which is our thing. But like, that's from a different place. So at like this school and the school I was at, what they need is like basic forms of human trust and basic language use and just communication and interacting with other people in a healthy way. And I mean, like, yeah, this school is one where, I think if she played the circle games for every single day, you immediately have, like, and it can even be optional, but it does take some kind of assertiveness that's going to take her, not avoiding every confrontation, but not getting in fights. But in this one, like, the thing here is, like, in our school, at least most of the time, security could come and pull out the student or two that was causing the worst problem. And then, the other 90% of students would start behaving well, 80% or whatever. Whereas, like, in this class, if she really has no support whatsoever and no ability to get the worst students out of the classroom, then there really is nothing she can do. because they're there to fight about anything. So you do the circle games, and they're the ones that will throw a ball back and forth or throw a chair or whatever. So it's like, is she in a spot where it's a genuinely safe working environment and there's no support for like the aggressive students, even if not physically aggressive, or is there enough support that at least would get taken out? I mean, I also wonder on this if anybody in the school is doing well, um, or if other teachers, some must be forming relationships with the students in some way. But it's kind of like what standard are you growing at? And at the school I was at, like there were teachers that I would say are not very far developed themselves and are not that far away, like always going out on smoke breaks and not that far away from probably like smoking with the students. And we occasionally had a teacher get fired for smoking with the students because they weren't, they were not as professional as what's expected at the high-end middle-class schools. But at the same, like, this kid, this class of aggressive inner-city kids, like, they should probably be in a program that's focused a whole lot more on building basic social skills as opposed to pretending that content is going to matter to them. And, and basic values and basic like learning to be nice and that there's a value to helping other people and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of flexibility she has to do that, but it doesn't sound like the school has any likeliness that they would ever fire her if she's staying there, since nobody else stays. And if she tried out and like I mean saw a video with students doing it and got to try out the games. And I mean, I think 20 minutes a day or 10, start with 5 and move up to 20 or whatever. But that's when I saw huge differences in my inner city classes, is like, instead of fighting with them for an hour, you do 20 minutes or half an hour of these games, and they've built social skills, they've built connections, they've built relationships, they've interacted, you've been part of the team instead of trying to be in charge of them. And then the last half hour, they're much more likely to try to cooperate because they've just been like literally practicing cooperating and building up that like neural structure of cooperation for the last half hour.
Yeah. So you would say, thinking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to just focus on the more basic fundamental needs of like
right. And
even
I mean, like,
just physical safety.
I always taught with kind of a modified Maslow's hierarchy, and then he has like an expanded one with I think 7 or 9 levels or something. And yeah, so he's got like an 8-level version that he's an 8-level version that's a little more complex, but basically like after food, air, drink, shelter, and then you have protection, security, order, law, limit, stability, safety needs, belongingness, and love needs, family, affection, relationships, work group, esteem needs, achievement, status, responsibility, reputation. All of those things, I mean, even down to the food level, are what her students are missing. Where, like, I guarantee there are hungry students in that school that are not getting, and even if they're eating every meal, it's junk food because they're most likely in a food desert and their families are not preparing healthy food. And just like my students, they're coming in after a breakfast of, Sunny D and hot Cheetos. And then they are not used to having protection, security, or law, or stability either in their lives or the classroom. And they don't have great family and relationships and work group and all that. And they don't have much sense of achievement or status or responsibility, which I think is where like all of those levels are where gang violence comes from, is that the kids would go and like start working with the gangs because they got order and security and even food and money and had some type of work group, even if it was for crimes, and get status and responsibility and an ability to get more. And only after all of those are met is there even a cognitive needs thing. And so if we're not like filling in these bottom levels of the pyramid, it really doesn't matter whatsoever that, what year the Civil War was in, especially for students where it has no relevance and can't tie to anything. And even in a normal school, like you're using all of these cognitive facts to help, like you already have your food and needs met, you probably have your safety needs met, and then there's some law and order in the classroom. And then really you're using all these activities of learning to help build up belongingness and love in the classroom, to build up esteem among friends and students in the school. And then you're getting cognitive needs. And then, I mean, especially things like uh, English, especially with poetry and everything else, starts to fill the levels above cognitive needs of beauty, balance, form, etc. That's like the entire school system is trapped in this cognitive needs thing, and that's what we started measuring. And now we're more and more focused on getting kids to memorize facts that have like really no purpose whatsoever, unless they're learning how to apply the facts towards something, or they're learning to build up values and build up a sense of personal, like potential, essentially. If the facts we're teaching them aren't helping them reach their potential as individuals and climb up this, level to self-actualization or transcendence, which apparently is another level he added in at some point, of helping others to self-actualize. But like her school, like most of the schools, is focused only on cognitive needs, and that's what they're measuring her on. And I think if you set up all these things that work in a nice, well-off school, suddenly you'll be able to have inner city kids care, and that's not true at all. If you wanted, like, just like our school, if you actually want them to function, like, give them their basic needs 1 through 4, and then maybe think about cognitive needs. And the thing is, cognitive needs don't need to be school standards whatsoever. Like, if the thing that starts making these kids think is learning how to repair cars to start with, and then showing their other levels or interesting history facts, like, the reason it works in middle class schools is that all of these other things are filled in by their family and their school, and they already have this good social order and esteem, achievement, and status. So now it really doesn't matter what cognitive skills you're giving them, it's going to be the next level that they need on this pyramid.
So bringing it back into this individual that we're talking about, how does this help her in her situation of she feels overwhelmed, overworked? She says that she can't get substitute teachers. Apparently there are no subs.
Right. I mean, we had the same thing. I was supposed to be a dropout re-engagement specialist, with a very specific role. And instead, I mean, it feels like 1 or 2 days a week, and it's only a 4-day school week. So, often up to half of the day became me subbing for other teachers, because we only have like 9 teachers in the school, and they only have 4-day work weeks, and they're still taking enough days off because they can't handle the students and they can't handle the stress. And, for several of them, 3 days was about as much as they could do, and then they'd be sick, or then they'd be on a vacation or whatever. So I ended up subbing all the time, and we had a grant coordinator that wasn't even supposed to be directly teaching, but she'd end up sitting in rooms, substituting without a teaching license, and not actually subbing, but just in there because, you don't stand a chance unless you're somebody who the students have seen and have some kind of relationship with. But I mean, this individual, I think what Teachers Starting Fires is focused on is like helping, essentially, like, it's a mindset shift. It's giving yourself permission to do something other than what we're told we need to do in the classroom, because that doesn't work so often. So, like, if you can go in and have this mindset that says, like, oh, like, it's okay to, I think it's like some of the best conversations students at every school ever have with teachers are the little, tangents that they get off on, or they start suddenly having questions about things they're actually interested in that was, thought inspired by the other questions being asked. But, that's kind of the idea, is like the relationship, the inner interest, the actual focus can be on almost anything, and she needs to get in there and focus on, interacting with the students and building a relationship and making them just interested in showing up. And, right now, like, she needs to, like, our goal is to get them, so interested in math that they want to do math, or so interested in this thing we're studying, history, that they want to study it. And, I mean, human interest in things should be natural. It shouldn't be like trying to trick them by saying, like, you have to, because in 5 years you might go to college, and 99% of the students have no college ambition, or are already sure they're never going to go, even if they could. I guess face the reality in her school that they're not going to learn anyways, the way things are going. So why not at least spend half the time building up a good relationship, a good culture, a good community, and really, like, half an hour a day, 5 days a week, or even if she only did 10, 12 minutes a day every week, that's an hour that everybody in that class has spent cooperating and working together and trying to achieve something together. And and it's that that after a few weeks you've spent 3 or 4 hours working with this team of people, like then it's a lot harder to be that guy that wants to destroy the classroom culture because everybody knows each other's names, everybody has interacted.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like it would be worth a shot because just keeping doing the same thing isn't really going to help. So if you're going to give her a piece of advice or like try to help her get started, what's something that she could start doing? Okay, it's Friday right now, so Monday morning when she goes into school, what's something that she could do that would get her going in the direction that you're talking about?
I mean, the simplest version is, um, and I mean, it depends where she is. If they're, not sitting in their chairs or anything, it's difficult. But trying to get them into a small enough group or just interacting and, handing out the popsicle stick and doing that 5-minute popsicle stick thing. And, and then cutting it off and gathering the sticks back up. But, it's the baby steps. Like, I think of when we taught rifle or archery, but especially, rifle, like you're teaching rifle and it's not that somebody who's running around couldn't also shoot rifle, but it's that they haven't shown even the baby step of like, hey, we need to sit down, or like we always have people ask permission to enter the range. And it's not that they couldn't like easily walk in safely and sit down without us having to worry, but we tell them we have to know who's on the gun range, we have to know who's there. But you have them practice with baby steps from like super tiny age. They always ask permission to come, into the lake area or into the pool area or into the shooting area. And they get this, basic like, oh, here's a gate, I have to ask to cross it. And it's building that habit. It's not that it's necessary. But for me, it's that same thing. Like, if you can't even get your class to a point where you can hand out, 5 popsicle sticks to a person per person and then get them back, like you're never going to be able to achieve any academics there, obviously. But so starting off with the like, hey, we're going to hand out these popsicle sticks, do the activity in the video that we're giving away right now, and then have them hand them back in at the end, right? And that's 5 minutes. But you actually see, like, of course, a couple people are going to sit there and be like, everything's dumb, I'm not doing anything at all. It's like, okay, like that's fine, that's your thing, you don't have to do anything. And but after a day or two of that, why spend 5 minutes doing absolutely nothing and see your classmates around you trying it out, and you're not fighting the teacher, you're not doing anything but wasting your time. And it's like, oh, okay, like actually this is not what I should be spending my time doing. And so they'll start to participate, they'll start to interact a lot faster.
Great. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And
right. And I mean, the popsicle stick covers a day or two. And, I would often do it during 5 or 6 of, probably 5 or 6 times during a quarter, so less than once a week, but can pretty quickly get up to a spot where, the popsicle sticks, you need more. And that's what the ball game is for.
Yeah. The ball game is kind of the next step. Questions like this come up all the time. And most of the responses are people just saying, yeah, your school sucks, you should quit, which I think is terrible. And I mean, while it is true that this school probably does suck and there probably is dysfunction in the administration and they're like, and it can be hard, but those kids need good teachers. And if all the good teachers just came and said, oh, this school sucks, I'm going to leave, then those kids are never going to have an opportunity to have the education that they deserve. They're just going to end up with teachers who also suck and who can't get a better job or don't care enough and are just going to be there and like be bodies to fill seats.
Right. And those teachers are out there, which is why when you see a teacher like this who, returns to this bad school that, looks like the environment is tough, but she's still there to support the students and is trying to ignore the advice from the rest of the world that's, be more realistic, get used to your job sucking, quit and find another school. If she's willing to work through all of that, that's the kind of teacher that these inner city kids I've worked with actually need.
What is a teacher who wants to do things like the craft stick games in their classroom? What does a teacher say to their supervisor who just wants them to focus on the curriculum standards?
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of the issue, right? Eventually we will need to get teachers or like admin on board, but there's a number of like of young or just still motivated and alive inside admin that want to try different things to make something work. And I mean, for me, like I'm not even sure I told my administrator anything, and I think it's kind of the same, like on a daily basis, worried about several classes where teachers haven't shown up. So if you have a young teacher who's there every single day and really doesn't have many complaints from the students, you're not fighting the students, you're not hitting them, you haven't broken any laws, like you're essentially doing your job. If suddenly you find out for 10-20 minutes a day they're playing this ball game, but afterwards everybody's still getting just as much work done. And for me, that was it. It was like out of a 55-minute class, I started, like, some days it was up to 20 minutes of the 55-minute class that suddenly was just this ball game. But our students, like, their attendance was so intermittent, they were never actually compiling any knowledge. I mean, our tests, like, tests that, it should have been, like, and these were high school, like 20-year-olds at times, taking these tests that should have been like an easy 8th grade level, but because they haven't been in school and they're not good at testing and they don't have any like testing ability or knowledge or background, they're failing continuously. And many of them, it's like they failed every test, but then did just enough work to kind of scrape by with a 61 or whatever, or a 59 and a half. And like for me, when I had the class, and it's that same story every time, like within a couple weeks of doing this, where I was finally just like, this is dumb, we need to know each other's names, and what better way than a name game, and they're super slow learners, so we're going to play it a bunch. But within 2 weeks or whatever, I was the only teacher where every student in the class I had knew every other student's name. And so suddenly all of these students who had 5 or 6 friends, like, even if not friends, they suddenly had 29 people that they knew the name of, guaranteed, because they had to use it on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is that a lot of people will agree that teaching is all about, well, an important part of teaching is relationships. But really what they're talking about is the relationship between the teacher and the student. And they forget that also the relationships between the individual students is really important, because that's what makes a community, and that's what turns your class into a learning environment where everybody supports each other.
All right, that's it for this episode of Teacher Starting Fire's personal podcast productions. Austin and I had a great time talking about this problem. And obviously, any post like this brings up a lot of questions and thoughts for teachers. We'd love to see comments below. And we hope that this can help out not only the original poster, but a couple other people who might have been listening in as well. So have a great day. If you are interested in the craft stick games, we've got a free video that you can download, and we also sell a set of video instructions as well as a 70-page instruction book about how to run those circle games that are mentioned a few times. If you want to start building that culture and focusing back in on building up relationships between all of your students, as well as between you and your students, please check out some of the links below, and we hope you have a great day and a great week of teaching.